Welcome to Henry Winkler's Fan Cult Podcast. Glad you're here. No, it's deconversion therapy. We fooled you. Man, psych. This is Karen.
Yeah. This is Bonnie, and what she was saying is not a joke. Apparently, somebody sent us a little TikTok video of Henry Winkler doing a dance and saying Happy New Year.
Yeah.
And said, share it with Bonnie.
It was beautiful.
And so, yeah, it was super cute. So Bonnie opened it. That's me. I'm talking about myself in the third person because this was my life in the middle of the night last night. I opened it up and I'm like, oh my goodness. Remember when he was doing that dance on Happy Days? And so I looked that up on the YouTube. And you know, when you can't find footage that's actual and somebody has played it on their TV and recorded it, that was one version. Like, wow, this is crappy quality. But, so then, of course, that led me down the black hole of Happy Days videos that pop up. And I ended up watching an old talk show, a daytime talk show from 1975, probably, with all the guys and the Pointer Sisters, who were, of course, smoking cigarettes as the other guys talked.
Right. I loved their music. I used to roller skate, too. He's so shy. Those are the
you know
days.
What? You might get people telling you that those weren't the Pointer Sisters.
Damn it.
I mean, I don't think they were.
What?
Yep, now I'm going to look it up. You're going to hate it. It could have been, though. Let's see.
All right. If I got it right, something happens.
Yep.
If you got it wrong...
it is the Pointer Sisters.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's Sister Sledge who did We Are Family that I always get confused with Pointer Sisters.
Yeah. Bury yourself. Step back. Sure,
right.
Try it.
Take it back.
Speaking of celebrities.
Yeah, speaking of celebrities, we are going to talk about a cult today that had more than two, at least 3 celebrities who we know of as members. So there were 2 Phoenixes. There was River Phoenix and Joaquin. They were members of this cult. It was, I guess, at that point called Children of God. Mm-hmm. And Rose McGowan, her family was part of it too. Which I think, you know, for 2 different families to produce kids who turned out to be rather famous in the acting world, that's kind of fluky. Yeah. Although when you hear more about it, you'll realize why.
Yeah. They're pretty gross. It's a pretty gross cult. But, you know, we talk about that we aren't real therapists. And if you've been with us a long time, you realize that deconversion therapy, it was sort of a tongue-in-cheek stab at conversion therapy, which is terrible. But the name also got us kicked out of a Reddit group for
Fine by me.
deconverted people because they started messaging me saying, we don't allow therapists in here to degrade the people in here. I'm like, no, we're not therapists. See, we're a comedy. And then,
and you even brought the analogy up of like, it's like retail therapy. Do you want to call me a therapist if I go blow some money?
Right. Yeah, so this one is a little more traumatic, but that's all right. We will hold your hand. We're not going to say anything too terrible, but be forewarned. This has all the hallmarks of the grossest cult in the world with all the abuse that you can ever think of. But we're also just going to talk about how weird the correlation is with regular evangelicalism and definitely how these stupid ass, untalented, mediocre white men end up leading like troughs of people. It's so disgusting and weird and all that. And when Bonnie and I start our cult, don't worry. It's going to be much better.
Yeah, and I won't have a chive in my tooth. Like, the only photo that I've seen of this guy, I swear to God. Like, really? That's the one? Apparently, not a lot of people knew what he looked like, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, he like didn't show up. But they called him Old Chivy, as, was his nickname.
Old Chivy.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, there's some gross stuff in this cult, but I mean, there's enough also stuff that, pertains to just growing up in church.
Totally.
Okay, see if you agree with me on this a little bit. Growing up as kids of this boomer generation, I think a lot of this and the people who are in this cult, who are the parents, are similar to our parents' generation.
Exactly.
And the way they raised kids or didn't.
Yeah. There was no, kids will grow up, and that's just a fact of nature. You don't have to be near them or do anything. They're still going to grow up. That was sort of like the philosophy of our parents, where nowadays it's like, I will help them grow up. I will help,
Right.
I remember my dad would say to me, and it was very soothing, but now I see it differently. He would say, children grow up despite the parents, as in, no matter what happens, your kids will turn into adults and be okay, type thing. But now I see that very, very differently. Now I see it as, you don't have to do anything. All right.
Yeah, my mom takes great glee in telling me, oh, yeah, when I was, raising you, it was do as I say, not as I do. And I'm like, yep.
We saw right through that. Absolutely. But, the good thing is we could grow up on TV. So let me start at the beginning with the asshole leader of this cult, David Berg, and his parents were religious kooks. So if this guy was born in 1919, that's crazy.
Whoa, David Berg?
I think so, yeah. That's okay. He old. Well, he's dead now, so spoiler. But if he was born then and his parents were religious kooks, I mean, being a religious kook in the 1920s must have been like extremely crazy. Yeah,
I envision people generations before us just kind of towing the line, blending in,
right?
Not ruffling the feathers.
More sort of, not Southern Baptist-y, but still sort of formal. But no, not this guy. So he was the youngest of 3 children. His dad was from Sweden, and his mom was not. But they were both evangelists, and the mother was one of the first female evangelists. So, I know, crazy. So, he had that strong mother situation going on, and they jumped around from denomination to denomination, which I sort of did too, out of earnestness of like, where will I feel more connected to God? And I think they did too, but I think they were also like, where can we plug in to lead the pack? Like, we're here to help others. So let me shift over here so I can find more people who want to follow me. Well, okay.
And what about a paycheck?
Oh, see, I hadn't even gotten there yet. I was just thinking...
I just figured that's why they were jumping around.
Yeah. But I'm thinking maybe I should have done that. Okay.
You were pure.
I was pure of heart.
No, yeah, yours was from a place of pure heart.
But I think it's very similar, though. I think that there is like, I am closer to God the higher in the church I get, or the more authority the leaders give me and responsibility, because that means I'm doing something right and all that bullshit. What did they do for a paycheck? I will tell you. That's what I will do.
This is David Berg's father and mother. Is that his name?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
I will tell you what the family did. Okay. So David credits his mom, Virginia, with influencing him the most, but here's her testimony. She became a wild child, society girl, atheist in her college years. You know what that means.
She went to college in the early 1900s.
That's what I'm saying. Like
Amazing.
Yeah.
And was a wild child.
I know.
Okay.
Living our
wild mean
life.
back then? She had 2 inches of legs showing on her bathing costume.
That's right.
Oh my God.
But then after the birth of her first kid, she broke her back in an accident and then spent 5 years like bedridden or in a wheelchair or whatever, always hovering near death. And then she eventually recovered and then became active as a Christian. So later she was like, yeah, Jesus healed me instantly. Mm-hmm. And there's really no proof if it just, eventually happened with recovery or if it was instantaneous. But she said it was instantaneous. And the churches that they were at like that. Because just like our Southern Baptists, there was no one there. People would pray for we pray for so-and-so and so-and-so. But there was no understanding or healing, no.
Like there were no miracles.
No miracles. We
dumping over your wheelchair.
Yes, stay where you are. So after that happened, once you have a testimony like that, you get to tell people, and they're like, "What? Are you kidding?"
Maybe she just passed a kidney stone.
That's right, and
I don't know. That's pretty instantaneous.
Know. So if she had 3 kids and she was bedridden for 5 years, did she have them other kids during that time? I want to know what was happening, but I don't, and so forth. No.
And next.
But they were in some church, denomination called Disciples of Christ. And when she started talking about her divine healing, and they were like, no, we don't do that, they kicked him out. And so they
I
went
just love that.
I know.
Because, okay, so wait, follow the logic of you kick out somebody who says they have divine healing. So if Christ actually came back, they'd be like, not so fast.
Right. We don't believe in miracles.
Christ has revealed himself as coming back. Oh my God.
Slow down. It's the 1920s. And So they went and they found another denomination, Christian and Missionary Alliance, right before David was born. And then they were all into that missionary part of things. And they hated the whole one denomination doesn't like another denomination situation, which, obviously. So they started, now, Bonnie, this is going to be a shock. The parents,
here it comes.
The parents thought, you know what? Let's just start our own thing. God has called us to our own thing. So they ended up moving. Guess where?
Florida?
Yeah.
No, really?
Yes, when you really need to suffer for Christ, you move to Miami Beach.
Oh my God.
So they went to Miami, but still, it's 1924. Is that when all...
So it's hot.
It's
they
always
didn't have
hot.
Air conditioning.
Well, back then, with global warming, it was still snowing. Yeah. But 1924, so I guess that's Prohibition, and that's Meyer Lansky and all the stuff that was going on those days.
I don't know the years like that. Good for you for learning something in school.
Well, I'm making it up.
All I know is when the Titanic hit, that's when Downton Abbey started.
Okay.
That's my reference for the 20s.
Well, I just remember, and this, again, we're going to get totally wrong, and we don't really care, but I think there was a lot of like rum running and a lot of stuff out of Cuba, and my father would talk about like, because they would have places and houses in Miami too, so they would go back and forth from Miami, all these gangsters that did not rap even.
They were gangsters.
Oh, gotcha. So, yeah, they moved down there, and the mother, Virginia, started leading a series of large revivals at the Miami Gospel Tabernacle, somewhere you go every Sunday.
That's too far for me to drive. Thank you.
But
I wonder if it's still there.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's the Miami Music Bowl now.
Yeah.
Joking. Or the Galleria. So David later in life talked about how he was physically and sexually abused by like babysitters and, all these things when he was like 3. So you've already, if he understood that, like, oh, this was not right. This was bad. I should not duplicate that later in life. He skipped over that part of the not duplicating.
That never happens, though. It's the same with abuse and like drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time.
But at the same time, those people who are aware of it don't like start alcohol cults and make everyone drink alcohol. So there's something where he is cashing in on his trauma. Something
he's also
I would
cashing
love
in
to do.
He's also cashing in on the only fucking job that he's ever been exposed to.
He's got some great
church.
jobs. Listen to these.
Okay, all right.
Listen to these. So his mom at one point, he tried a few other things. So he tried to be a preacher and was asked to leave nearly immediately. This was in Arizona. He was married, he had kids, but he was asked to leave for a sex scandal with like the secretary or something. But he said he was asked to leave because they didn't like him fighting for racial justice. Which makes him very lovely if that's it. But at the same time, either could be right, both could be right. Because churches, they did not like racial equality at that point. So after he got kicked out of preaching or before, don't know, he went to a business administration school in California. So there's your business education. There's the seed where it's like, I want to do something. I now know how business works. I need to make money. I don't know. So he did try and be a junior high school teacher, which...
Oh, my God.
There you go. I'm sorry, but that's perfect, especially before the, 2010 or something where we're now much more vigilant and sadly suspicious of men teaching junior high. This was, perfect for someone like that who wanted to be near young children.
Ugh.
I know.
So just having a little bit of information about cult leaders, I think that he is probably not long for these jobs that you have to do where you have to show up to get a paycheck.
Right. You see it now where people are like, down with capitalism. I want to be an influencer. And they don't understand that that's still capitalism. But the whole, I want to show up when I want to show up, and I want to talk about me, and I want to make money. That's, wait a minute, is that what we're doing? Well, besides the money part, I think it is.
Right.
So, other thing.
No, I want to shine a light on horse shit. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that's what I want to do. That's what I think we're doing. Shining a light on horse shit.
Oh, yeah. So the other weird thing, when he was growing up and his mother, was around, he used to incessantly, from a young age, like I'm talking 4 or 5, used to just masturbate, which
Chronic.
I have heard is not unusual. When little boys find that little thing there, they're like, what can I do with this? Much as your story of Joe Rogan, who probably from a very young age figured
out what to do with that.
Yeah. Okay, listen to our other episodes. But so he would just do that, I guess, around the house. I don't know. But his mother would catch him, and she would threaten to cut it off, which I would assume is horrifying to a young kid. And so she caught him again when he was a teenager. So what do you think the best punishment is? If you think it's wrong and all that, which obviously this woman did, and you catch your son.
What do I think her punishment?
Yeah.
What do I think her punishment was for him?
Yeah. Or what would you assume would be good to do? Whatever.
Kick him out of the house.
Yeah, keep his penis. No. That would be traumatic. She made him continue in front of his father to completion.
Oh.
What kind of
How could you possibly finish?
There you go, Bonnie. This is the crux right there.
Oh my God.
So remember that incident because that informs everything.
Okay.
I think about what is it? There's like some cultures or sects, SECTS, where you have someone in the room with you on your wedding night just to make sure things are complete. Like all of that leads to a weird underground fetish of danger. That's all I'm saying.
And I'm pretty sure monkeys do it whenever they feel like it.
I would assume. I have not been to the zoo in a while. So,
monkeys in the wild, not just in the zoo.
So, can you imagine how much more in the wild? Okay, so he was generally a masturbating loser. He ended up being his mother's chauffeur for like 10 years and her assistant, and he would like lead music. So already he has this weird bond or unbond with his mother, and he's already got these demented things. But then we have the perfect storm, which we've talked about with these cults. It's the 60s and 70s. All these people, the youths, have turned into idiots across the country. And they're like, again, much like today, down with the man, except instead of being influencers, they are buying vans and they are, they're doing that now too, but like VWs.
No, they were dropping out.
They were dropouts.
Back then.
They were the whole
From
deal.
Society.
Yeah. So it makes it that much more attractive for people who started then doing their own cults. You have Charles Manson. You have L. Ron Hubbard, who started doing Scientology stuff because they're like, look at all these people looking for meaning in their life. I will give them meaning. And I will also open a bank account.
Right.
So all I picture is just all these dropouts and disenfranchised people and these mediocre men with big brooms just sweeping them into their own little camps of whatever.
Yeah. And it's funny how we always in church talked about the lost people as people who, didn't know where they're going, and Jesus is the way to the light. Mm-hmm. So there's a big thing about being lost.
Right. And of course, we would have thought these people were definitely lost. But the whole thing about if you see people who are like that, tell them about God, because they know that vulnerable people are perfect for all this. So do not be misled that that's the reason AA meetings are in church basements. Churches know to allow vulnerable people to come on their campus and feel comfortable. So Sunday comes around and you're feeling that strain for a drink or a shoot-up session. And then you're like, I'm going to go to my comfort place. There you go.
And when they say, come on our campus, did he take that literally with his masturbation problem?
Funny.
You're welcome.
David must, you could just blacklight everywhere he went, and that's an issue. All right, so they were really into the music thing, which you love. You love when a church or a cult is like, let's add singing, and a lot of it. So,
yeah, can you imagine the style of music that they would have to like pump into their services? Like bad 20s and 30s music.
Yeah. This is after that, though, in the 60s and 70s. So you had a lot of like the TV show Zoom. You had a lot of that kind of singing with kids lining up and being like,
oh, I was thinking of his mom.
Yeah, no, I don't understand what kind of music. If they were doing the Charleston, wow.
Oh, right. Back when hymns were like a year old. Hey, this new hymn came out.
Do you know how many times they must have sang Go Tell It on the Mountain? I bet that one. Our church would do that. Our minister of music loved it because it was the jazziest tune we could get away with. It's so sad. So David started this thing, which I actually heard of later, called Teen Challenge. And it's where you get kids to play in bands. They would attract people. They'd preach on the streets. I mean, it was an attractive group of young teens and maybe a little older who would jump around in sundresses singing about Jesus. And in the 60s and 70s, that wasn't uncommon. And they would also go around like in restaurants and talk to different tables of people. And I mean, it was a free-for-all back then.
Well, I also think of the reality of it. Like, okay, I'm 19. Not everybody goes to college back then. Not everybody goes to college now. But at least now it's a little bit more a part of, a lot of people's journey. But at 19 back then, you're like thrown out into the world. Okay, where do you live? Mm-hmm. Hey, all these people are getting together and they've got a big house and they're talking about Jesus. I'll talk about Jesus for a place to live.
Yeah. And they're like, I'm spiritual. I like this love situation.
Yeah.
It makes total sense because, it's not like people are out there saying we have a cult and what you see now is going to get really bad. That's not how it is in the least. So these kids, they were out there, they were doing videos. I mean, you can find videos of even the young kids, and they were pretty organized. It was some tight music. So David Berg, along with his wife and his kids, they decided to found an organization called Teens for Christ in Huntington Beach, California. I love how cults are attracted to nice-looking places, which, again, when we do our cult, you want it to be in the mountains. I want it to be, somewhere tropical, but we'll figure it out.
Well, I always think that criminals deep down know that they're criminals and might have to go on the lam. So they're going to go somewhere where the weather's good in case they have to live on the streets or in their car.
Ah. Or escape by boat.
Yeah, just leave the country on a body of water.
Right.
Florida, sure.
That's why, Florida. So, well, in California, they got resistance from the local churches because
What?
they were nutbags. And that could have been because his group started picketing the regular local churches.
That's wise.
I know. So he's like, you know what? Let's take our group of 40 and go on the road. You were right. When they went on the road, they ended up just camping in parks. And that's when a reporter first called them the Children of God, because maybe they're called the Children of God, and then later they're called the Family and the Family International and the Family of Love and all that shit, because name changing is a great way to sort of fix your image.
Yeah, but doesn't it remind you of like when a TV show changes, like, oh, here's Valerie, and it's Valerie Harper and Jason Bateman, and then she leaves, and it's like, oh, we're going to call it Valerie's Family. Or, what's that other...
Our old church, which was First Baptist and blah, blah, and now it's Family Church. But they're still Southern Baptists, but they're going to that whole, we're a family bullshit.
Yeah, and like... Remember the Ellen DeGeneres show called Ellen started out as These Friends of Mine. So to me, it just seems like retooling something for some kind of prayer that you're going to remain viable, you know?
Right.
And relevant.
Yep. And, make it sound a lot kinder if people started hearing, stay away from that Children of God cult. Yeah, you should. Luckily, we are the family. We are not the Children of God one. But I just keep thinking, okay, people know that I ended up in a missionary organization called YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And what I loved about it is the communal aspect. Like, I loved living. Now, they are based in Hawaii, yet another tough place to set up shop.
Right.
But they're based there, and I just loved, being social all the time, getting to know people. And the same thing that this cult did where, you live here, but everyone has a task to keep this shit going. So I'd be in the kitchen, or I'd be, wherever, cleaning toilets. And you didn't mind because you felt you were doing something for the greater good, and you were having
Everyone
fun.
was contributing. It was a team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would love that now if I didn't dislike people so much. I worry.
Preach it.
I don't know how we're going to do our own communal thing, because I get annoyed at people very easily these days.
Well, I have an idea.
What?
It's radical, but I realize so many of my radical ideas have come to fruition that I should have capitalized on them back in the day. But like grown-up housing that is kind of along the idea of what dorms were.
Yes.
You've got a place where you can sleep. You've got your little desk, so you've got your quiet place, but then you've got common areas as well.
Right. Yes.
There's a nice living room. There's a big room where you can watch TV with a big screen and other people. There's a study room. There's a computer room. Who wouldn't want that?
I agree. Like, we stayed in this sort of bed and breakfast thing that we didn't realize was also a cult.
Right.
We went to, I guess it was Colorado, and they had, this bed and breakfast, but it had so many different rooms that you could hide in one and never see anyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can go and have a real job. Anyway,
this is a great time to say we have a sponsorship program. Go to deconversiontherapypodcast.com if you'd like to help us build this future cult. So, the communal part, it sounds good, like you said, especially if people were like, I want meaning. I left my family to protest Vietnam. They got mad. They're such, prudes. I lived in a bus. I need something more steady. And living in a commune was somehow more steady. And at the beginning, they were just like a church. Like they were all about Jesus and they were all about love, and everything seemed really seemed really good. But then they started to morph into things that David thought he could get away with. Now, before it got really creepy was the time that the Phoenixes were in it. So I think they were in it for about 10 years, but it was before the gross stuff happened.
Yeah, they were on the cusp. And I can tell you more about that whenever you're ready.
I am ready, because if people didn't grow up with River Phoenix...
They sure grew up with Joaquin Phoenix.
Exactly, that was a big, came out of nowhere to me. I was like, who this guy? But River Phoenix was just this beautiful actor, just
when he was
all
a
over.
Kid. Yeah, when River was a kid, you'll probably remember him from Stand By Me.
And he was so good in that. He was like an adult actor in a little body.
Yeah, and we'll find out why in a little bit. So if you don't know about River Phoenix, it's because when he was 23 in 1993, he died. He overdosed on drugs outside of Johnny Depp's club called the Viper Room on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And this I didn't even know till today, or maybe I did and have forgotten it, but Joaquin was with him when it happened, and he was only 19. And his little sister was there too. And to have that be something that is stuck in your brain that you've seen, that's just traumatic as shit.
Yep. And
that's big T.
Right. And he was with his girlfriend at the time. She was there. And I think recently she had said, like, we didn't even know he'd taken drugs that night. That's what she said.
Which is strange, because what I read, some guy was saying, here was the thing. We would smoke crack and then, or like put cocaine directly into our veins and then take heroin to like come down. And so something about he drank a spiked drink that night knowingly. And he said to somebody, hey, I think I'm ODing. I'm like, how scary is that? To like know it and say it to somebody. Anyway, so that's what we were dealing with when we were like just a tiny bit older than he was in 1993.
Yeah, the girlfriend that was with him, Samantha Mathis, you barely ever hear about her, but she had dated Christian Slater, and so she then was in a relationship with John Leguizamo. And when she was dating John Leguizamo, she started doing the film with River Phoenix and ended up leaving him for River. And then she said that just totally screwed her up. But she also dated Christian Bale and a lot of other famous people. But I would just have stopped at Christian Bale if I were her. I remember that when we were like, oh, who is this actor named River Phoenix? That's such a weird name. And then you find out, like, the rest of his family is named, like, Liberty and Butterfly and Elbow and all this stuff.
It was Rain.
Think, like, Joaquin's name was really Leaf. So...
Oh, yeah.
I think I picture the parents, like, she's rolling around naked and pregnant in the forest. And, it's like, I see a river and delivers one kid. I'm on leaves. I mean, they were very crunchy.
Well, they were hippies, his parents. And the parents' last name was actually Bottom.
Okay, I'd change it. I get it.
When they were in the cult, that was their last name.
So it could have been River Bottom? That's not good.
Yeah, but his middle name is Jude, I think, after Hey Jude.
That's right.
Anyhow, so So the Bottoms, John Bottom was the patriarch, the dad. He was designated the cult's Archbishop of Venezuela and the Caribbean. So yeah, they lived over there for a while, and they were missionaries. So, of course, get this, and I don't know how they were committed to this. The children of God, they didn't pay their missionaries. So it said that their family was never very well off. And I'm like, that's saying it lightly. So when the family followed the cult across the U.S. and South America, they were making the children go out and sing on the street corners for loose change.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, okay, anytime anybody makes the kids perform for their, to bring home the
Go
bacon.
earn money. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just such the Hollywood mentality. Like, oh, here's a little pile of talent. Go on out there, honey.
Right. That's where it started. They became comfortable in front of audiences. And I think that's when he said he learned to play guitar, because later, River Phoenix's last movie, it was about him being a musician, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, that continues in this cult where they send people out and say, hey, go make some money.
Yeah, and if he didn't bring home enough change that day, the family wasn't going to eat, which is just crappy.
Yeah, to put that on the kids.
Yeah, to put that on the kids. Okay, so they've got the 5 kids. They're in the cult, and then they decide they're going to leave the cult because they have told members of the cult, or I guess the ladies, that you are now to go out and, as a means of getting people roped into the cult, have sex with people.
Yeah,
we're going to tell them what they called it. Tell them what they called it.
Flirty fishing.
Well, that's what led them to get out of the cult. So they ordered the women in the cult to have sex with men to bring people to the cult. And then his parents decided, or I guess his mom decided, nope, that's it. We're going. And of course, what I'm thinking is, well, she's like, I've had 5 children. I'm done working. You're not going to force me out there to have a job with the sex to bring people in.
Is closed down.
It's my children who should be working. Get out there.
I have my priorities.
So they escaped on a boat from Venezuela. And guess where they came?
Los Angeles.
Miami.
Oh. Well,
so
okay.
Great. Florida gets another notch on the old bedpost of shame. Here we go. And one of the things that River said, this is just tragic, but River at one point said that he lost his virginity when he was like 4 to somebody in the cult. And at one point, Joaquin said, oh, he was just messing around with the press and saying that. So I don't know. But, it's not completely implausible.
Right.
Given all that we've heard about this cult.
Well, I know that the Phoenixes talked about how they were barely educated, and that seemed to be the MO again, because not only is everything going haywire, but David Berg is like, guess what? The end of the world is coming. You don't even need to be that educated. You just need to commit to this. And they would do, the singing things that I've been involved in too, where you're singing and you're thinking about heaven or going to be with Jesus, and it's a euphoric thing. Like, it can be scary in your day-to-day life, but you're held on by that glue of those times where you feel euphoric and join together with everyone else. So the kids, none of them ever got above a 6th grade education, because there was no need for that shit. And they were also...
And that was probably just what they absorbed.
Yeah. And there were really strict rules. So they even have videos of all the rules. But first, let's back up. They did not have the rule of the family should stay intact. So at the beginning, like, you weren't even supposed to hold hands with other people. And the pendulum really swang the other way, where they started telling people who they should be married to, even if they didn't love them. And then they started having really strict rules where it was, your kids are communal. You don't have to raise them. If they end up in a house with 40 other people that aren't blood relatives, doesn't matter. So, like, none of these kids had attachment to their actual parents. And that's why they also made the rules really strict so that parents didn't really have to discipline other kids. I mean, they did, but they had like a set of rules to make everything easier, from, these are your tasks every day, to how many pieces of toilet tissue you could use. So it was really detailed. And they also started telling the kids, you can't have fun. So kids were very adult-like almost instantly. Yeah. They couldn't joke around with each other because of the Bible verse about if you're seen as foolish, that's bad, and, spare the rod, spoil the child. So even if you're laughing or having fun, you can get terribly disciplined by people who aren't your parents. So people who are willing to whack you much harder than you deserve. Not only all these rules, but then it starts getting super crazy, super terrible, and turning into one of the worst cults as far as terribly damaging in the future. And that's the future you will have to wait for in part 2. But there's more stars, and there's sex, and there's grossness. But until then, you can find us on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and our private Facebook group where you answer 2 questions and get in there. And then also, we really appreciate sponsors. You can go to deconversiontherapypodcast.com, sponsor us for the price of a caramel latte every month, and then join us for our live Zoom meetings where Bonnie is revealed. Like a magic trick.
And I would call them parties.
I would call them celebrations.
Yeah. I would call them connection opportunities, because you guys are so fun to talk to and get to know.
I would call it sneaky indoctrination, but that's just what you and I will call it. But
right.
Yeah, get in touch with us, and please rate and review. That really helps us this year. We want to grow even more and reach out to more people who are in need of a little, a little respite, a little fun, and a little cult behavior. So we'll see you for part 2. Bye-bye.
Bye.